ElevenLabs just released their new Conversational AI 2.0, and it's a full voice AI agent building platform. In this, I'm going to see if it can compete with other top leading platforms like Retell and Vapi, or if it's all just hype. If you're new to the channel, I'm Tommy Chris. I run my own AI agency called Rose AI, where I actually build these voice agents for real companies. I've automated over 90,000 calls. So when ElevenLabs dropped their new Conversational AI 2.0, I had to give it a try and see if it can actually compete with the leading platforms Vapi and Retell. I'll go over what works, what doesn't work, and show you everything in between as far as voice quality, as well as all the features they have. So let's get into it. So here we are on the announcement of the actual Conversational AI 2.0. And if you didn't know, ElevenLabs is basically the main text-to-speech and voice provider behind a lot of the major platforms like Vapi and Retell. And a lot of the time they had only been a text-to-speech provider. However, about 6 months ago, they released their conversational AI, sort of voice AI agent creator. However, it was very sort of bare bones compared to platforms like Vapi and Retell, who are solely dedicated to actually creating these voice agents, whereas ElevenLabs actually is more focused on just creating realistic voices, and they just released their new model for that as well, V3, which sounds really good. However, they just released Conversational AI 2.0 and added a bunch of features. So here we can look at some of those. They said they add this state-of-the-art turn-taking model, which is basically a big problem a lot of these voice agents run into is that they have trouble when someone speaks over them and they end up getting sort of caught in this loop where they keep pausing and responding back. Next, they add knowledge bases. They even have knowledge bases before, which is a very basic feature in these. They upgraded the multilingual so that it can automatically detect a new language. You're able to actually have multiple characters or voices per agent, which is pretty cool. You're not even really able to do that in Retell or Vapi. However, I don't think that's super applicable or useful anyways, unless you want to pretend like you were transferring to someone. They do have a bunch of different security features, and we'll go over those soon. Way more than I see in any Vapi or Retell. And then in terms of the modality, you can also create them to be text-based or voice and text-based, which is something that I'm not sure if Vapi has, but for sure Retell just implemented a feature that does that. And then they added more telephony support. So previously you were only able to import through Twilio, which is the main provider anyways. However, and you weren't able to do any outbound calls, but now you are able to do any more outbound calls, actually do batch calls. And you can use SIP trunking to import any phone number. However, unlike Vapi and Retell, you're not actually able to buy phone numbers within ElevenLabs, which is a bit unfortunate for beginners who aren't familiar with SIP trunking. However, setting up a phone number with Twilio is very easy. So now, one of the more interesting things I think to cover is the pricing, because ElevenLabs strays away from the typical pricing that we see for these voice agents, which for Retell and Vapi is to charge basically just by per minute. You are sort of, your usage is tracked per minute in ElevenLabs. However, you're not billed per minute, you're actually billed monthly on just their normal plan. So if you buy, let's say, the creator plan is really the one you'd want if you're gonna build any of these, which starts at $22 a month. Other than that, you really don't get many minutes. I guess you can mess around on the starter, but I wouldn't recommend it. Especially if you're deploying anything, you definitely wanna have more than 50 minutes. I routinely go over that in even just a couple days of usage with my production clients. However, it's a bit odd looking at here because, again, you only get the additional minutes at this plan. And also, if you were to use any of these other features, you're able to use them alongside the conversational AI product. So if you are using a bunch of these other models or perhaps their API, I guess it could be worth it if you're already bundling it or spending a bunch of money. Compared to Retell and Vapi, it's just not as flexible. And if you use up to as many minutes are included, it's about the same price as Vapi or Retell. It's definitely not any cheaper than them. And so the thing you'd worry about is if 1 month you use under 250 minutes, then technically you're paying more per minute and you're not getting the maximum usage out of them. And then 12 cents per minute is sort of expensive for additional minutes. If you do run a really big agency, I will say at this business plan, the pricing is pretty good. However, that isn't applicable to most people. And really, unless you're hitting these 3,600 or 13,000 minutes a month and can afford this, it makes sense financially, these would be the two plans where I think it really competes with a Vapi or Retell in terms of price and making sense. It is just sort of odd billing monthly for something that's so usage based in a voice agent. But now actually hopping into the platform, going into sort of the meat of what everything is, here is what you'll see when you sign up for an ElevenLabs account and try out their conversational AI. Now, obviously you wouldn't have seen data analytics here. That's because I've already made a couple test calls and tried things out. But it is good to know you have all your analytics here. It's a bit more bare bones of an analytics tab compared to Retell and Vapi, which, again, sorry for sort of comparing these always to Retell and Vapi. That is really the point of this video, because if you're building a voice agent, you want to use the best platform for your needs. And Vapi and Retell are just the leaders in the space right now if you're going to build anything in production or even just a good demo. And so that's really sort of the standard that has been set that ElevenLabs needs to meet. So looking at this, their analytics is really not up to snuff with Retell and Vapi in terms of flexibility, because they let you create a bunch more charts than just this and a lot more flexibility. As well as one thing I do want to mention is that ElevenLabs has an LLM cost, and I forgot to mention this, where if you go here to their agents, you're not just billed per minute, but on top of that, you're billed for what sort of LLM you use. So if you use a heavier one, sort of like GPT 4.1 versus 4.1 mini or nano, it'll actually cost more, which is exactly how Retell and Vapi work, except it's not included in this pricing per minutes. It's actually on top of that. You'll be able to see this when you choose the LLM. You can see all those prices. So it varies for some of the lightweight models, 1/4 of a cent for Gemini Flash, and then 4.1 is 3 cents. Goes up or down with whatever model you choose, but something to be wary of. And so yeah, by actually hopping into the agent builder, and to be honest, the user interface here feels a lot like Vapi. I still prefer Retell's over Vapi and ElevenLabs, but honestly, I don't think the user interface is super important. Walking through the features here, you obviously have this prompt here, and I actually pasted the exact prompt I have for one of my Retell agents in production for my own company. It's actually set up on my website. And then going down here, you have a lot of the same features such as dynamic variables, again, choosing which LLM you want to use, the temperature of the agent. So they actually have guidelines here of how the temperature of the agent, which is basically the variance of it in terms of if you wanted to limit the token usage per response. Now it's -1 right now, which basically means it's uncapped. Like it mentions, a limit greater than 0 will sort of apply that limit to how many tokens there can be in a response, which is basically limiting how big a response at once can be from the agent. The knowledge base, pretty normal here. You are able to use URLs, which is a nice feature. And then they do have a RAG knowledge base. I'm honestly not quite sure what Vapi and Retell use, but I know the RAG database is much better depending on sort of the size of the knowledge base you're uploading and the information. Now, the tools inside of ElevenLabs are pretty interesting. So some of the built-in tools they have are obviously transferring. You can actually transfer to another AI agent. You can detect the language like we mentioned before. Skip turn is basically where the AI won't jut into a conversation. So if someone's on the phone and the AI asks what their order number is, and they say something like, and it's clear that they might sort of continue, they don't need the AI to jut in and say something there. You can tell it to skip turn, and basically the AI will pause and not respond during that. And now getting into the real meat of it is the custom tools. Now they have webhooks just like any other sort of, and I'll actually jump into one of them that I've already built, sort of booking a meeting, which is a very classic use case. So they have webhooks, which is really what you're familiar with in terms of custom tools inside of these platforms, where you're able to call out to a URL and either send or get data from it. And the nice thing here, and Retell actually just implemented this update as well, is you're able to choose the method and add sort of headers and parameters and all of this stuff to actually authorize, so that if you were to if you just want to integrate directly with something like cal.com, you could just put the cal.com API here instead of having to go through your own server like make.com n8n or any sort of custom code. So that's a cool feature. And basically this works the exact same. The body parameters would just be where you put sort of the email, appointment date and time, username, all of that fun stuff. And then in terms of the client side tool, this is something I had to research a bit and I still don't fully understand it. But one cool thing I do believe you can do with this, on their website, you can see this voice chat that ElevenLabs has. And if you ask this to sort of navigate you to a certain page on the ElevenLabs website, it can actually redirect you to that page. And I believe you're able to do that with this client-side tool, which is really cool and something I'm actually was looking to implement, and it was sort of difficult to implement with Vapi and Retell. And so I might end up putting this widget onto my website. Now, moving on outside of just the agent, obviously you have access to all of the ElevenLabs voices, and they sound perfect because it integrates directly with ElevenLabs. And honestly, the latency on these agents is fantastic. I'll show you that once we actually get to testing them. It's such a seamless integration with ElevenLabs since it's literally their platform that honestly, the voice quality and the quality of the call is better than anything I've heard. Continuing on here, there is multi-voice support, like I mentioned, where you can switch voices. You can use Flash, which is a text-to-speech model you want to use. It's the fastest, it performs really well. You have a lot of control over the speech, obviously, because it's directly within ElevenLabs. And so if you have any specific pronunciation you want, if you want to change the latency at all, you have a bunch of control over that. Same with the stability of the voice, the speed, sort of the similarity, and all of those little tweaks you can make to the voice. Now, these are features that are inside of Retell and Vapi as well. However, I'm guessing they're just a lot more responsive in ElevenLabs. Again, due to the fact that it's literally, they're the main voice provider and you're on their platform, and there's less back and forth between the servers. Now, in terms of analysis, this is sort of the post-call analysis and data collection. One thing, unfortunately, that I do want to sort of mention, and it's here in the advanced tab, is you are not able to actually integrate with make.com to get the post-call data analysis, which is honestly a huge con for ElevenLabs right now, because you do need sort of custom code to authorize the sending of that transcript and everything there, which I think is a feature that they have because of their advanced security, which we'll talk about now. However, I've not tried with N8N, but it is just really unfortunate that you won't be able to access the post-call analysis unless you are here in their call history. Which is basically you're not able to send it to a Google Sheet. You're not able to do anything with the information after the call unless you call an API specifically to this call history, which is just not really what you want to do. It's a workaround. So unless you are creating a custom function, that is a large roadblock. Now, in terms of security, one cool thing is enabling authentication, which requires users to sort of authenticate themselves before speaking to the actual agent. This is actually a feature that clients have asked me to implement in production. And so that's something that might seem sort of useless or random, is actually really useful for certain clients. Now, in terms of the allow list, you can add certain sort of domains that are allowed and whitelist them. This is sort of enabling anything you want to override during the conversation. That can be changed depending on how the conversation goes. This is if you want to fetch sort of like the start call data. Again, this is the post-call webhook. If you were to create one, you see you need a callback URL, you need this auth method, and this ElevenLabs signature header with a secret it gives you. And at least in the make.com webhooks, that isn't possible. I'm not sure about N8N or Zapier. I know for sure with custom code, it's not very difficult. However, it's just unfortunate if you're doing everything no code that you'd have to code certain parts of it just to integrate with this agent. You can obviously set limits on concurrent calls and daily calls. Now, looking more at the advanced, I know we sort of touched on that real quick. Turn timeout is the number of seconds until the AI will speak again. And I'll make sure to note if these are any unique features specific to just ElevenLabs. That security tab had a lot of them. And next, the silence end call timeout. This is how long the person that's calling is silent until it just automatically ends the call so it doesn't go on forever. Max conversation duration, that's just how many seconds the call can last at maximum. And so these would be keywords. So if this is typically in sort of like a medical setting, or if you're in a specific niche, certain words are said a lot, it'll make sure it transcribes them correctly. Text only is self-explanatory, it'd just only be text. And then these would be the events sent to the client through the webhooks, as well as any privacy settings, which again are sort of security measures if needed. This is how long to actually keep the conversations. It's currently set at 730 days. I guess you could put -1 to make that unlimited. Lastly, this is actually one of the really cool features that ElevenLabs gets really well, and that is their widget. And so they have both a chat and sort of a voice widget, which you can see down here. And this creates the really cool sort of Jarvis AI-esque speaking disk orb that is almost synonymous with ElevenLabs now. And honestly, I just love to look at it. It's super aesthetic. It's really cool. You can change all the colors of it. You actually have a bunch of options to modify this without code. You actually have some terms and conditions that a caller might have to accept before initiating a call, which can be, again, another security measure. You can see ElevenLabs is clearly experienced in the enterprise and sort of medium to large business space with stuff like this and offering these features. And so now it's sort of time for the rubber to meet the road. Let's actually test this agent.
Hi, this is Sarah. How can I help you?
Hey, Sarah. I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about the services you offer.
Hey there. We build custom voice agents, conversational AI, system integrations, and do analytics. Is there anything in particular you'd like to know more about? Or would you like to set up a free consultation to explore how a Rose AI can help your business?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could tell me a bit more about sort of your custom AI voice development.
Sure thing. We specialize in creating custom voice agents that automate customer interactions, handle scheduling, qualify leads, and even process orders, all while keeping that human touch. Basically, we can build a voice agent that fits your specific business.
Is that sort of like what you are right now?
Well, kinda. I'm a virtual receptionist, but our custom voice agents can do a whole lot more, like handle customer service calls or even make sales. Would you be interested in booking a demo to see what a custom voice agent could do for your business?
And so you can see, even though I interrupted it, it did perform very well, and the latency was just absolutely stellar. Now, unfortunately, I record on my iPhone, and so I can't call it here. However, I did call it over the line, and I used a Twilio phone number, and the latency really was about the same as it was here. And it's by far the fastest I've seen from any AI voice platform, as well as just the integration with the ElevenLabs voices makes it sound really smooth. And so overall, I believe that in terms of voice quality and latency, it's probably the most realistic voice right now. However, it's just unfortunate that it's missing a lot of features. The post-call webhook is seriously a detriment to it. The pricing is really unfortunate and not beginner friendly. However, if you are sort of working with a bigger client, perhaps someone that needs all those security measures, then ElevenLabs is definitely something that I would look into. Something I would mention, if you're going to dedicate building your entire agency or company's voice agent on ElevenLabs, please take into consideration that ElevenLabs' #1 priority isn't this no-code AI agent builder. It's building really realistic voices that other platforms like Vapi and Retell can use anyways. And Vapi and Retell are dedicated to making the best no-code AI voice agent builder and API. And so it's really important to sort of look at where those companies are situated. ElevenLabs does have by far the most resources and money out of those 3 companies, but just the trajectory they're at, and at least currently how it's looking, they're not putting a whole bunch of time and effort to ship features on this conversational AI, which is unfortunate because they have such a good sort of infrastructure around it, considering they are the best AI voice provider. And so due to that, if you are building one of these voice agents, I still would recommend Vapi or Retell. You can actually check out my Vapi versus Retell video down below, where I do a full comparison between the two. You can find what voice agent platform works best for you.